Hi, I'm Chef Lou, and I'm going to show you how to trim, seam out, and cube a pork butt or pork shoulder. This is a boneless pork shoulder, as you can see. It came from an artisan butcher, and it is twined with kitchen string in order to hold it in shape if the purchaser wanted to make a pork roast or a braised pork out of it. So the first step that we're going to do is remove those strings or kitchen twine so that we can open up the pork and begin to fabricate it. So it's a good idea to use scissors for this. That way you're not dulling your knife by cutting through string. Once you've done this, the pork then can be trimmed at the top to remove excess surface fat. This is called the fat cap, and if you were going to roast this pork butt roast whole, you would leave that on, or possibly score it in a crosshatch fashion, like so, so that as it roasted, the fat is going to melt underneath and produce a crispy crust on the top. You'll see us do that in various demonstrations and other videos. But for today, we're going to remove this fat cap because we're going to trim, seam out, and then cube this pork butt to make a stew. So I'm going to start by slicing off just the fatty area, as you can see here, and you want to try to take just the fat and not get into the meat. But if you do, it'll only be a little bit, so that's okay. So we're removing that excess fat, and you can see that it's thicker in some areas and thinner in others. So you have to kind of finesse that a little bit. Just watch what's happening under your hands. Taking off this back corner is a little bit fattier than the rest. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now this is a boneless pork butt, and so the fabricator at the meat store has opened it up a little bit to take out the bone in some areas, but this one is pretty intact. You're going to hear me speak about muscle bundles. So here you can see the muscles of meat in here that run back through the grain of the meat like so. And those muscles are held together by fat that you can see there, the white part, and also connective tissue, which chefs call silver skin. So we're going to start by seaming this out. That means to separate the muscle bundles through their seams of connective tissue. So I'm going to start at the most obvious opening using the tip of a flexible boning knife. And this is the easiest way to get started in seaming out. And so you'll see that this pork shoulder or pork butt will then start to open out for us, and we'll be able to see the muscle structure better. So opening it out there. When we're going to separate our meat into cubes to make a stew or a saute or a stir fry, we need to make a decision as to how much connective tissue we should leave on the meat. If we try to completely remove every bit of connective tissue, we won't have much meat left. So I'll show you as we go along how much connective tissue and what kind of connective tissue is going to be acceptable. And that will cook and soften, especially if we apply moist heat. So coming down like so, turning it around, and you can see that I'm exposing some large areas of fat. Those we're going to remove. Now, if we were using this pork butt, as I said, for a roast or braise, this fat would remain inside and would melt and would give us some nice lush mouthfeel. But in a stew, it's going to be a bit too much. So we're going to open that out. And there is going to be a significant amount of waste. And that's par for the course. We know that this is going to happen because pork butt is a relatively inexpensive cut. We can deal with that. So, depending upon how much pork butt you need for your recipe, you can decide how much you're going to work on this at any given time, but I'm going to bone the whole thing. Once you have the whole thing boned, then you can freeze the pieces. So removing more of the fat and opening out even a little bit more. This is a little bit time consuming, but it's certainly worth the effort for what you're doing. So if you were to buy this and just cut it into cubes without seaming out, you would have a lot of fat in your product, and it would make your sauce greasy. So I'm coming down to pretty nearly some clean meat here. Taking out a little bit of excess interior fat. And if you see these little clumps of tissue that have some hemoglobin, that's the red pigment that's found in meat, we can take those out. So here we have just about 3/4 of a pound of meat, which is what we're looking for a stew for 2 people, 3/4 to 1 pound. So at this point, you can see there is a little thick connective tissue. See where it's kind of striated? That's going to be hard to chew. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and make our cubes. You want to take a look at what you've got. And yes, there is some connective tissue, but what we have left is pretty thin and is not going to be a mouthfeel issue. You see a little bit of excess fat. Go ahead and trim that off. So I've lost maybe, I would say 30% of my purchased weight, and that's par for the course. You want to cut your cubes. As you can see now, you can see there is some connective tissue in there, but it's minimal. And long, slow cooking is going to melt those and give you a lush mouthfeel from the collagen, which is a protein substance that's found in the meat. If you see any excess fat, you just remove it from the cubes. So there you can see some trimmed, seamed out, and cubed pork butt ready to make any kind of a pork stew or even a pork stir fry that you might want to make. Thanks for viewing. I hope you enjoyed this, and happy cooking.